My manager tried to cancel my wedding leave. Not reschedule it. Not, can we shift a few days? Cancel, as in, your wedding doesn't matter, get back to work. That's when I realized the job I'd protected for 7 years was already dead, and the only question left was how loud it would die. I'd been with that company almost 7 years. First job after college, fast growth, great bonuses, and the best boss I've ever had. He didn't micromanage. He didn't care where you worked or what hours you kept, as long as the work got done. He literally pushed people to take time off. We had unlimited PTO, the kind that only works if your manager isn't a petty dictator. I took 30 to 40 days a year, and he celebrated it. Over 3 years, I got a 9% raise, then 13%, then a promotion, and another 7%. During the pandemic, we went remote. I asked to go fully remote so I could leave the expensive city and move back home. He approved it. HR tried to cut my pay because of cost of living. My boss shut it down. He's doing the same job, pay him the same. That's the kind of leader he was. Our team was 16 people, and the newest person had been there over 3 years. Nobody left. People got better offers all the time and stayed anyway. I had offers too. I didn't take them. Why would I? I was treated like an adult. On top of that, I was part of a small subgroup, 4 of us, who handled the nastiest, most complex projects in the business. The stuff that didn't move unless we moved it. For years, we were the only ones in the company who truly understood that work. A mistake wasn't oops. A mistake was hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, burned. It was also the fastest growing part of the business, so we were constantly slammed. Then the company upgraded leadership. About 2 years ago, my boss's boss got promoted from VP to SVP, and they hired a new VP to replace him. This new VP walked in like a cult leader with a spreadsheet. Overnight, everything became metrics. Everything needed to be tracked, even work that didn't fit metrics. He wanted to measure productivity by projects completed per month. One project could mean a 2-week monster with landmines everywhere, or a 1-hour quick fix. Same score, same checkbox, same judgment. He also demanded every project be finished as fast as possible. If something was due next week, he wanted it done in 3 days, because urgency builds performance. He pushed my boss to assign tasks manually instead of letting us pull from a shared queue like we always had. He tried to jam a living system into a rigid box, then punished us when it didn't fit. My boss fought him constantly, but the VP kept squeezing. Our metrics didn't match his fantasy expectations, so he treated my boss like a problem. And 9 months ago, my boss finally had enough. 13 years at the company, early employee, respected by everyone. He left. The team was stunned, like someone had ripped the floor out from under us. We immediately pushed our most experienced teammate to replace him. She understood our culture and our workflow. She would have kept the team steady. The VP interviewed her and a pile of outside candidates, and then hired a woman from his old company. From this point on, I'll call her boss, because that's exactly what she thought she was. She arrived and started ripping apart everything that worked. Processes we'd refined for years, gone. Autonomy, gone. Trust, gone. Micromanagement flooded in. Meetings multiplied. Random rules appeared overnight. She didn't ask questions. She issued commands. She didn't listen to the people doing the work. She listened to the numbers she wanted to see. In less than a month, our productivity fell off a cliff. We went from the most experienced, most productive team in the company to the worst. Then, about 2 months in, she turned her attention to my subgroup of 4. That's when things got personal. She started meddling with our project management even though she didn't understand the work. She created delays, confusion, and mistakes, all while blaming us for the mess she caused. Then she hit us with it. Our metrics were the worst on the team. Of course they were. We weren't doing easy, repeatable tasks. We were doing work that took 10 to 100 times longer than anything else. Boss didn't care. She told us if we didn't meet expectations, we'd be flagged. So we did exactly what she demanded. We stopped taking complex projects. We focused only on small, fast tasks, stuff we could crank through to inflate our project's completed numbers. Our metrics shot up, and the company started choking. Sales panicked almost immediately. Their biggest deals were tied to the complex projects. Those deals stalled. Their commissions were suddenly on the line. They came to us asking when the big projects would move again, and all four of us gave the same answer. Boss told us to prioritize metrics, so we are. We're doing small projects only. Then we said the part nobody wanted to hear. If you want the complex projects done, talk to boss, because we're not touching them under these rules. Boss and the VP lost their minds. We got pulled into a meeting and told to go back to complex work. We said no, not because we were lazy, because we weren't stupid. If we go back to complex work, our metrics drop, then you punish us for failing your metrics. You can't have both. They refused to change the metric, but they still demanded we do the complex work. So we refused again. Sales complaints exploded, bigger, louder, more desperate, and finally the SVP stepped in. He was the one who created our complex project group in the first place. He understood exactly why we existed. He took one look at what was happening and backed us. He told the VP and boss we would not be evaluated by those metrics anymore. We could focus on complex projects without fear of punishment. So we went back to doing what we were actually hired to do. But the damage was already spreading. The other 3 people in my subgroup saw the writing on the wall and started job hunting immediately. They lived in the expensive city and were forced into the office more often. Boss changed the policy from come in 1 to 2 days when needed to 3 days mandatory, pushing right up against what company policy allowed. I was remote, so I got less of her daily garbage. I wasn't applying elsewhere yet. I was planning my wedding. My old boss had approved 2 full weeks off for my wedding and honeymoon before he left. The timing landed around the 3rd month of boss being in charge, and boss was furious. We'd embarrassed her in front of the SVP, and she wanted revenge. She couldn't punish us on metrics anymore, so she looked for other pressure points. That's when she tried to take my wedding. She called me on Zoom and told me my approved wedding leave was canceled because the team was too far behind. I stared at her and said, "I'm not missing my wedding. I'm taking the leave." Then I made it simple for her. You can lose me for 2 weeks, or you can lose me forever. Your choice. She started yelling. Threats, drama, power tripping. I didn't argue. I just left the Zoom call. A little later, she sent a formal email. My leave was canceled, and if I didn't show up, it would be treated as job abandonment. It was a bluff, a loud, ugly bluff, so I answered it publicly. I replied all and CC'd the VP, the SVP, and several sales directors I worked with regularly. I explained I had a wedding and honeymoon, that my leave had already been approved, and that I was resigning effective immediately due to her blatant disrespect. Within minutes, my Slack blew up. The SVP and multiple sales leaders messaged me. "Don't do this. Please don't leave. We need you." Then the email thread exploded with people finally saying out loud what everyone had been whispering. Boss had destroyed the team, and major deals were now at risk because I was leaving and nobody else could handle the complex work. The SVP shut the thread down, but watching it happen felt incredible. I didn't respond to anyone. I didn't do any more work. I turned everything off and went to a bar. That night, I slept like I'd been released from prison. The next morning, I woke up to several voicemails from the SVP asking me to call him. I called later that day. He listened, really listened. Let me unload the whole story. Then he made an offer. If I came back and worked 1 more week, tried to train a couple people so the team could survive while I was gone, he'd give me a $3,000 wedding bonus. I'd get my full paid leave. And when I returned, boss would stay out of my way. I'd be allowed to run the complex projects myself. He also promised they'd bring 2 trained people into our subgroup permanently to rebuild what we'd lost. I agreed. Weddings aren't cheap. I spent that week trying to train replacements, which was borderline impossible in that time frame. Then I left for my wedding and honeymoon. The trip was amazing. The VP tried calling me a few times because about a week and a half into my leave, the fourth person in our subgroup quit without notice too. I ignored every call. I came back rested and ready for the circus. And it was worse than I expected. Sales was drowning. My inbox was a disaster. Everyone was asking about complex projects that should have been done 2 weeks ago. The people I'd trained couldn't really do anything. Half of the original 16-person team was already gone. I did the only thing I could do. I shut off direct Slack messages. I told the sales directors to send me a prioritized list of deals that were truly urgent. I worked through that list during normal working hours only. No nights, no weekends, no heroic fixes. Boss didn't bother me. The VP tried a couple times. At one point, he pushed me to work weekends to catch up. I said no. For about a month, that's how it went. I handled priorities, did my job, and watched everything else burn around me. Boss never once mentioned her promise about rebuilding our subgroup, so neither did I. Instead, they tried to dump medium complex projects onto the rest of the team. They hired new people into the main group and completely ignored the training program my old boss had built over 4 to 6 months. They didn't teach, they threw. New hires made expensive mistakes, real money mistakes, the kind that don't show up as bad morale. They show up as losses. Then came annual bonuses and raises. By then I was actively job hunting. Interviews, late stages, no offers yet. Boss sent me a Zoom invite to discuss compensation. She gave me 80% of my expected bonus, the absolute minimum band, and a 0% salary increase. Her reasons were the usual corporate poison. Not a team player, poor metrics. Somehow I was responsible for mistakes made by brand new hires. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't beg. I just mentally checked out. From that day on, I went into quiet sabotage mode. I did the absolute minimum required, nothing more. I waited for the bonus to hit my paycheck 2 weeks later, and I let the machine grind itself down. Sales started freaking out again. Complex projects stalled. After I slowed down, everything slid right back into a cliff. Boss sensed weakness and decided to go for humiliation. She barged into a call I had with sales. One project was already a week and a half behind. In front of everyone, she started tearing into me. Lazy, unhelpful, not doing my job. I let her finish. Then I said calmly, "If you give me 0% raise, you get 0% effort." And I added the part that made her face go cold. "If I'm so useless, you can finish this project yourself." Then I left the call. After that, she tried to shame me in email threads too. Every time, I replied with the exact same line. 0% effort for 0% raise. I stopped joining her Zoom calls. I stopped answering her in Slack. I didn't give her arguments. I gave her a wall. It made her furious. I still didn't have a signed offer elsewhere, but I could feel it coming. That's when the VP scheduled a Zoom call with me. He tried the good cop routine. "Tell me what's wrong. I'm on your side. Let's fix this." I looked at him and said, "I got a 0% raise, so I'm working at 0%. He pretended he had no idea how my bonus and raise ended up like that, which was hilarious because he approved them. So I said, "You're getting exactly what you're paying for." He snapped into threats, said he'd fire me if I didn't return to full productivity, said the people I trained would replace me soon anyway. I actually laughed. "What people?" I asked. "I didn't train anyone." He froze, went silent, muted himself. I could practically hear him typing frantic messages to boss. A few minutes later, he unmuted, and his entire personality had changed. Suddenly, yes, compensation had been handled terribly. Suddenly, he wanted to make it right. At that point, I didn't even care anymore. I knew they needed me more than I needed them, so I gave him my price. 25% raise and 150% bonus based on the new salary, or I resign today. He called it absurd, impossible, Unrealistic. So I lied. I told him I already had another offer and I was leaving no matter what. He asked me to wait and brought the SVP into the call. The SVP tried to negotiate me down, and that's when I felt it, clear as day. This place wasn't worth saving. I rejected their weak counteroffer, thanked the SVP for everything he'd done for me personally, and told them I was resigning immediately. The VP tried one last jab. No notice means a bad recommendation. I didn't blink. My old boss will give me a glowing recommendation. I'm not worried, and I left the call. The SVP tried to convince me to reconsider over the next week. I didn't. A few weeks later, I got an offer. I took it. My new job isn't amazing. It's still corporate. It still has nonsense. But it's not boss. And that alone feels like breathing again. My old boss even reached out recently and said he might have an opening in a month or two and wants me to apply. I'm waiting. From the friends I still have at the old company, I hear it's a dumpster fire. They're losing millions because they don't have competent people who can safely handle complex projects. They even offered a massive raise to another experienced guy from our old subgroup to come back after I left. He said no. Everyone who's still there is trying to escape. Even simple tasks sit for weeks. And now it sounds like the VP is quietly setting boss up to be the scapegoat. Apparently, she's about to be fired. And honestly, it won't bring my old team back. But it's still satisfying to watch the person who destroyed everything finally get crushed under the wreckage.
That's where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and see you next time.